Hi, everyone. First and foremost, my name is Dinashini, and I'll be your host for today's session. In conjunction with International Women's Day, we are running a month-long campaign to celebrate prominent women Middle Templars in Malaysia. So every week throughout the month, we'll be releasing a short episode where our featured Middle Templar will share their success story, gender-specific challenges faced along the way, as well as advice to young and aspiring professionals to break the bias. Our feature Middle Templar for today's episode is Justice Datuk Nallini Pathmanathan. She is a Malaysian Federal Court Judge, the first female judge of Indian ethnicity in the Superior Court of Malaysia. In June 2021, she was elected a bencher of the Honourable Society of Middle Temple, and she has practiced as an advocate and solicitor for 23 years and was a partner in one of Malaysia's largest law firms before elevated to the bench. So Judge, it has been quite a remarkable journey from law school to the bench. What has been the part you enjoyed most throughout your journey so far?
Thank you, Dina. Good evening, everyone. It really is an honor to be able to address you today. Yes, which has been the most enjoyable part? I think becoming a judge and sitting as a judge at the various tiers. By way of background, I didn't pursue the normal route taken by a lot of law students in that I didn't read law as first degree. I think I've said this elsewhere, but I was very much more immersed in sciences, really looking forward to a career in medicine. That didn't happen. And instead, my first degree is in physiology from the University of London, where you study how living organisms work and how bodily parts function. It's a core subject in the study of medicine. I didn't really want to go any further in the subject after completing the degree and was wondering how to proceed when my late father suggested the law. So I can't say that I really tremendously enjoyed the earlier part of what I was doing. But once I started the law, I must say I became very interested, and it meant doing the conversion course in law and the bar. And of course, I came back and I think joined the large law firm Screen and stayed there for 23 years before being invited to join the bench. And I am very gratified and honored, really, to be the first female of South Asian descent to have been appointed to that position.
That is truly a remarkable journey, Judge. So my next question is actually about breaking the bias, the challenges that you have faced in the past. During the course of your legal career, did you face any gender-specific challenges? Perhaps in your area of practice at that time or anywhere else?
Yes, that's a good question. There were, I think this is 35 years ago, so there were numerous challenges, gender included, and gender was certainly a fairly large obstacle, if I could put it that way. The challenges really ranged from the type of work one was expected to do, and it extended to experiences in court as a litigator, as a young female barrister. So I actually had to start doing areas of work that were not particularly popular or considered to be career enhancing. Family law, employment, and industrial relations work. And after that, through the years, onto insolvency and a little corporate litigation law. If I can start off talking about family law, it was not very lucrative and so not particularly very well looked upon in the larger firms at the time. However, the flip side of doing such work was that I was able at a relatively junior level to conduct by myself full trials in the High Court, because divorce petitions are of course done in the High Court. So if I might digress a little, I vividly recall a divorce petition premised on adultery, which was heard before Justice N.A. Chan, where I had to cross-examine both the husband and correspondent on that very issue. And what was, I recall it now, thinking that it was funny, but it wasn't at the time. One of the instances involved an allegation of adultery in a car, and whether it was even possible for that to happen. And we had to go into the size of the car, etc. It was quite a difficult area, but hugely entertaining. That was one matter, and I don't think we won. I don't think I succeeded in that case. And similarly, I recall, on the other hand, being extremely pleased when I succeeded in committal proceedings against a husband who had stubbornly refused to pay any maintenance for years. And there it was before Justice Pei Chin then, an amazingly quiet, effective judge who said nothing, but at the end promptly said, look, into jail unless you pay up within 2 weeks. And that was so effective, there was no further default as such. Apart from family law, I also had to do another area that was not particularly popular, which is industrial law. Not many lawyers were prepared to undertake that work. So there was bias again, in that it was not a popular area of work. But I was extremely grateful for having had the opportunity to practice there, because I learned all my examination in chief and cross-examination skills there. I always acted for the employer, being from a large firm. So you had to deal with union officials. It was very rough and ready, and you had to think on your feet and learn these skills fairly quickly. It used to get fairly aggressive in that court at that time. I still remember the industrial court chairman, then Rama Hussain, who later joined the superior bench. And on the opposing side was the late and great Mr. Kupasamy, an amazing man. In the course of cross-examination, things got so heated that he asked me whether I wanted to take the matter outside. And I, of course, said I did, but I remember the chairman hastily adjourning the proceedings. Almost immediately, she fled. And we took the argument further until we cooled ourselves down. So I think that sort of aggression came across because I was young and female at that time, and not expected to undertake that sort of work, and not expected to be quite so fiery. It was considered inappropriate. But as I said earlier, I'm very grateful for all that I learned in the industrial court, and it is such an important area of the law because it involves the right to livelihood. So today we see so many women in that field, which is truly encouraging. Now, from family and industrial, I was then able to progress literally from that work onto the more, what they call the more sexy areas of work, which are corporate litigation, insolvency. And while there were women in those areas, relatively few, mind you, they largely assisted their male counterparts. They didn't appear on their own, as it were. For me, the 1998 financial crisis provided great opportunities for recovery and opportunities to go into insolvency. I remember on the securities front that there were so many cases that I and my entire team, which were largely female, got to do a great deal of work in this area. If you ask me to very candidly say how women were viewed at that time, I can tell you that on the one occasion that I was pregnant and I was involved in a very, it was a large matter, a heavily litigated matter, which involved working very late nights, etc. And I remember as we got towards the end of the matter, my leader said to me in the most well-meaning way, really in the most well-meaning way, given my late state of pregnancy and the fact that I was working late, I was told I should consider taking on an easier job, like working in-house, though I doubt working in-house is any less stressful, as I was married and my husband would ensure that income was not an issue. I was silent at the time, but I remember being extremely upset at the suggestion. The suggestion was that litigation was not ideal for women. Mm-hmm. To be fair, on the other hand, I was also working on another very heavy brief. And there was no attention paid whatsoever to the fact that I was pregnant. I was in fact given more work. It was a 65-day trial and I was asked to compile the entirety of the evidence on that subject. So you can see there were differing views on gender there. Different modes but undoubtedly at that time, certainly there were not many women, and they were not particularly encouraged. The male assistants got a much better deal, put it that way.
Yeah.
So if you ask me today in a nutshell, what you need to do in order to counter gender bias, which of course exists, I would say go into your litigation head on. You have to deal with it and face it and establish above all that there is no real difference premised on gender alone. The ultimate worth of your work as a barrister, judge, whatever, turns on the hard work you put in. It's actually the number of hours of work that you put in. And of course, your natural innate ability to do a particular area of work well. So in a nutshell, it's actually opportunity and perseverance. I did sort of try and create my own opportunities. For example, I would take on cases that were interesting that at the appellate level, even at a young stage, even though they were what you call surefire losers. There was not a very good chance of winning at all, but I was prepared to take them on for the opportunity to appear in an appellate court, for example, and argue a matter. So I think that is something else one has to do, take on the work and not be scared of doing it. Often I think the problem is whether you will get the opportunity or be offered that opportunity. And that opportunity will sometimes arise in the less easy cases or cases which people think they might not succeed in. And I think it's important to remember that, a lot of young lawyers particularly think that a great deal depends on their advocacy. When you lose a case, when you win a case, you think, wow, I did a brilliant job, or I really messed that up. And while that may be 3%, 5% of the case, unless you're really negligent, don't forget that it's the merits of the case that itself that determines whether you win or lose. And I think the other thing that's important to take away is always, you are not the center of the entire piece. It's the litigant. It's the litigant. We all forget that. We tend to think as lawyers, God, I did a bad job. It's actually, you're doing everything for the litigant. So you have to focus on the litigant. Yes, I think that kind of wraps up. I can go on and on. So I think coming to the next question.
It's a very empowering story to hear that you have faced all of these challenges, but it's just a matter of making your opportunities, finding a way around it, facing it head on, you see. And I think it's something that we all need to hear, because I would like to ask if, you mentioned something about facing aggression during a litigation proceedings and such. Has it ever made you feel lonely in your career?
All right, I'm condensing everything that I went through over, I'm 62 years old. I'm condensing everything into a very short space of time. Let me tell you, it was difficult at the time because it takes its toll. It does take its toll. And there are times when you feel very frustrated, bitter, but also times when you're incredibly pleased. When you do well, as you would know, even in your career, you would have gone through exactly that. So yes, occasionally there was immense personal distress, etc. I tend to be fairly aggressive myself, I'm told. So I suppose in that sense, the aggression didn't bother me. It's more the perspectives, how people view you. In terms of competence, I think ultimately one is concerned about how you're viewed when you've done a lot of work or you've done it reasonably well. And if your competence is not given full recognition, that can be a problem. I think with age, it becomes less important. But at the time, as a young person wanting to get somewhere, it can be quite a deterrent thing. But I was fortunate, I had a lot of strong family support, and I think that's crucial. If you have a family, you need a lot of support from spouse and children, etc. And a good backup system, I always say.
That's a great answer, Judge, because as you rightly point out, being a young litigator, there's a lot of insecurities when you're facing it, whether in court or even outside of courts. So it's to tell ourselves that it's okay to face everything head on. And hearing your story, it truly is very empowering for us young practitioners. The next I would like to ask you about is the diversity in today's legal industry. In your personal view, do you think gender diversity at the bar has improved over the years?
Definitely, definitely, absolutely. I mean, I think, now we see so many more young women in court. And of course, the universities have a greater ratio of females to males. So we see a lot more females in court. I think definitely in the subordinate courts and certainly at the superior level as well. And I, having left the bar and that sort of thing for some time, I can't say what it's like now, how much it's changed. But I suspect that a lot of the so-called obstacles or ought to have gone away because the young men of today are far more, I would assume, should be far more understanding of the need for equality in how they deal with both genders. What I can do, though, is tell you that from my perspective as an appellate judge, there are a lot of women, but less than expected, who take on the pivotal role of arguing the primary case. They're always there. I think a lot of them do the backup work, but the number of women who actually run the case, given the numbers we have at the bar, I think that's still lacking a little. All right, so for example, when I started off on the bench in the criminal courts, and there, of course, as expected, there are not that many women. And given that the diet in the criminal high courts is trafficking in drugs and as well as murder, which carry the death penalty in this jurisdiction, there are relatively fewer women. However, there were at least 2 or 3 who stand out and who are still there today. In the federal court today, again, for criminal matters, it's largely men. There are few more women appearing and younger women, which is very, very encouraging. It's in terms of habeas corpus, which is another area I have a lot of interest in, there are a lot more women coming in now. So that's positive. But I suppose there's still that stigma to criminal law, and it may be a difficult area to penetrate, but I think it's an area a lot more women should get involved in. It's certainly a very interesting area of the law. Turning to civil matters, yes, no shortage of young ladies today, but young and older ladies, to be fair. There's a wide range of matters when you say civil. It's huge. So certainly you have sufficient coverage, but what I would say is this: I don't see that many women on the larger matters involving a lot of money. Ultimately, if you ask me, and I may be completely wrong, but a lot of it seems to be related to the question of the value of the brief in terms of dollars and cents, or whether it's a very, what you call, high profile matter. Where there's a great deal of money involved or authority is involved, I suspect, again, this is pure supposition from my experience over the years, I think a lot of people outside who have to hire the lawyers feel that they are best covered or have the best chance of winning with what they consider to be tested and tried personalities. So that's, yes, so that's an area where I would say it would be nice to see more women actually running the brief fully. We have a few, but not enough. In fact, I remember one matter where we had a senior lawyer appearing, and it involved various parts. It involved parts relating to science, chemistry, etc. Those were the details. And of course, there were 3 males, and the young lady was right at the end. And of course, they were discussing the more glamorous issues of law, like good faith and contract law, etc., etc. But when it came down to it, it turned on the facts. And when asked about the facts, they all promptly said, well, we're not able to assist you. And finally, it was the young lady at the end who'd done the hard work, the graft, on what the facts and figures were, what volume of water was needed, etc., or petrol, or whatever it was. And she stood up on being invited and was able to present it perfectly well. So again, I think that's where we need to see more women at the forefront, which I think we all look forward to. Yes.
We now see a higher number of female judges at the Apex Court. Do you think this perhaps has an impact on the diversity of the bar?
If you say the bar, you see, if you look at it, as I said, there are already far more women. If you look at the Attorney General's chambers, all prosecutors who even prosecute the drug trafficking cases in the case are female.
That's true.
But not at the bar. So again, perhaps at the bar, defending crime is still a male purview, or falls within the ambit of the males. But I don't see why the women cannot break through. There may be other factors involved, which I'm not aware of. But if the women can prosecute, I don't see why they can't defend equally well. They are very detailed. The good thing is they're very detailed. So as I see it again, bluntly, a lot of it has to do with money. The more lucrative a brief, I think women tend to get ghettoized, if I can use that word. And I've said this elsewhere as well. They don't do the really glamorous, high-paying briefs. They do the areas that are very good, but maybe slightly less well-paying. And a lot of young females get slotted into assisting. So the opportunity to actually grow may be limited, and I think it's time for more senior lawyers to give that opportunity to the younger ones as junior counsel, allow them to do some of the cross, allow them to perhaps argue a portion of the case. It's practiced sometimes, but perhaps more of that would be useful.
Okay, that's brilliant. Judge, I just want to ask, as women, we often wear many hats, mother, daughter, juggling between career and family. And it's not easy to maintain that balance between work and all other aspects of life. How do you manage your time in respect of all these commitments?
Yes. Well, if I had to put it in one sentence, I would say basically in life, you don't get everything. You don't. I think today it is easier because that balance, I think men are expected to understand that their wives work and they're supposed to take on more of the duties. I have been extremely fortunate. I have the most supportive husband and I have one son. And I think that's it. I think that puts the finger on it. I only have one son. I would have liked to have had more children, but my work priorities took up a lot of my time. So, in life, everyone has 24 hours and you have only so much you can do, however clever or however hardworking you are. So if you ask me, I think something gives. And it's important that you make that decision early on and not think that somehow magically that you will have the entire rainbow and the pot of gold at the end. It doesn't work that way. I don't think life ever does. So if your passion is the law and you're prepared to put in a lot of time, you may find that other areas of your life are less fulfilling. But again, I don't say this. A lot of women have managed to do a lot of these things, but I speak for myself. For me, I find generally that something will give. If you want to do something very, very well, you have to put in the work and the time. So my advice, for what it's worth, is I think you need to work out those priorities early on in life and go for them the best way you can. And of course, it really helps if you have a supportive spouse and supportive children and backup. I think that makes a huge difference.
That's a very lovely reminder to prioritize what matters the most to us. So, Judge, please, sorry.
I just want to say this, sorry. I'm so sorry to interrupt. Just to say that even when you prioritize and plan, life has a very funny way of coming in and just disrupting everything.
Yeah.
So you can have a plan, but be prepared to evolve with it. That's what I would say. Sorry, yes.
Sure. No, actually, Judge, I just want to ask if you have any advice to share with us, especially for young and aspiring practitioners looking to make an impact in the legal industry.
Well, I think when you work hard and you're good at what you do, it will come naturally. I make that sound again very easy. I think you have to sometimes ask for the opportunities. One area that I would say, and this is a regret I have, I've said it before elsewhere in talks, I think I never did enough pro bono work. I regret that. I spent a lot of time pushing people, reminding them about the bill book and trying to keep up with that. And having moved over onto the bench and seeing, say, life from the criminal bench particularly, and then moving on, it gives you an entirely different perspective. I think a lot of us, particularly at the bar, we see a certain segment of society and a certain segment of people. And it's very easy to live in that ivory tower without being aware that the majority of the population in Malaysia don't have access to justice. So one of the ways of moving on yourself, I would say, and I would urge a lot of young people to consider this, men or women, essentially do some pro bono work. Take on a couple of briefs, be it environmental matters, criminal matters. Those matters make a big difference, like family law matters. They impact the ordinary person at the street level, and you learn a different area of the law, and you actually appreciate what a difference you make as a lawyer in the sense that you can actually make a huge change in people's lives. Sometimes it's not so apparent in a corporate brief, without in any way undermining the importance of corporate litigation, corporate law, and business law. That's essential for the economy. So.
Yeah, that's excellent advice, Judge. Especially, I think in litigation, we are constantly chasing after deadlines, and we don't stop to realize that maybe take some time and see how much impact we have to everyone around us. So, Judge, thank you so much for taking your time out of your busy days to be with us, to share your stories and thoughts with us. It's been an absolute honor having you here. I just want to ask if you have any ending remarks to our viewers.
Yes, I have a few quotes. I did prepare these. Some of them are not, actually most of them are not mine, but I thought it'd be quite funny to share them with you. One, well-behaved women seldom make history. Don't always feel you have to conform to the norm.
That's true.
The second one, also not mine, is behind every successful woman, there is a slightly surprised man.
I love this.
I said that to my husband and assured him that he's not one of them. Okay, the third one is mine, perhaps slightly more serious note. Gender bias constitutes a part of the continuum of diversity, which includes racial diversity, which must be included consciously in order to achieve inclusivity. Secondly, the present and future debate in respect of gender bias is no longer perceived to be a binary one, but rather part of a gender continuum for which our comprehension and awareness are evolving. So we need inclusiveness in respect of both racial continuum and the gender continuum. I think that's the way the young people are, well, the way the world is heading now, and we need to be conscious and inclusive of those aspects. And maybe, Dina, I could just end with this very old chestnut, which I'm sure all of you have heard, but I always find it interesting. And I leave you with this. Fill in the relevant punctuation marks to the following. A woman without her man is nothing. You can have a stab if you want. And I'll give you a clue. You need a colon.
What a wonderful way.
You can have more than one punctuation mark there.
Yeah. What a wonderful way to wrap up the session, Judge. So thank you so much for taking your time. I think we have learned so much about breaking the bias, the importance of diversity, and facing challenges in the legal industry. To all the viewers, do check out our LinkedIn and Facebook page for all other episodes to come. In the weeks to come, we have Ms. Tan Swee Im, an international arbitrator, a general counsel, Ms. Farah Swana, Ms. Hani Tan, a human rights lawyer, and Ms. Larissa N, a human rights activist. Before ending, we would like to extend our gratitude to Alto Icon for coming on board to be our platform partner for this event. Well, so that's it for today. Thank you everyone for watching and stay safe.
Thank you, Dina. Thank you very much.